Let me be one of the first members of the Omaha Metro to welcome you to Offutt Air Force Base. And on behalf of the Omaha community, I would like to welcome you to your new home here in Nebraska. Hi, I'm Rob McCartney, anchor for KETV's Channel 7 News. You know, I have a sincere fondness for the men and women who serve Offutt Air Force Base because I grew up as a son of an Air Force dad and appreciate what you do for your country each and every day. The state of Nebraska is committed to keeping our community safe, which is why it's vital that all of us in the Omaha Metro partner together in this huge endeavor. One of the biggest challenges in our community is drunk driving, which has become the state's most frequently committed violent crime. The statistics are shocking. In Nebraska alone, alcohol-related crashes will take one life every 4 days and injure one person every 3 hours. These lives are impacted forever for a crime that is 100% preventable. The consequences of DUI will change your life, but you can protect the investment you've made in yourself and your career by being prepared, by always designating a sober driver and always having a plan. Today, we ask you to partner with us to eliminate drunk driving and help keep your community safe. During this video, you will hear facts and stories of lives changed by drunk driving. Some of the images you see will be graphic. They are images that live forever with some of your Offutt teammates. You'll learn the risks associated with choosing to get behind the wheel after drinking. And you will find that as a member of Team Offutt, you have the opportunity to be the solution and protect our nation's most critical resource, you and your teammate. Offutt Air Force Base has seen an alarming rise in its number of DUIs. Over the past 3 years, the number has steadily increased to an average of 10 DUIs per quarter. The growing problem of drunk driving across the ranks here at Offutt led the wing commander to commission a DUI task force. The goal of the task force was to change the culture at Offutt, to alter the perception of drinking and driving, and to teach all airmen that having a plan is the only choice to maintain the mission readiness of the men and women of Team Offutt. This drinking and driving issue is not just an airman problem. Arrests are happening all across the ranks and organizations at Offutt. Over the past 3 years, the number of airmen receiving DUIs has slightly declined, while the numbers across the remaining ranks have slightly increased. This alarming trend mirrors the national statistics as well. But in Offutt's case, the more senior you go in rank, the more detrimental the effect it has on your mission effectiveness. If you get behind the wheel of a vehicle after drinking, you run the risk of life-changing consequences, both professionally and personally. Nebraska's Mothers Against Drunk Driving Executive Director Simra Reynolds knows all too well that DUIs are crimes that can affect anyone at any time.
And all of us say it's never going to happen to us. I'm guilty of that. I worked with MAD. I was so proud I came to MAD. I was not a victim. My daughter was a teenager. She was 10 when I started. And I thought, well, my daughter could get hit by a drunk driver because she's a teenager. I thought my husband could get hit by a drunk driver because he rode a motorcycle. But you know who was hit by a drunk driver? My 75-year-old mother looking at Christmas lights on December 17th in Fort Collins, Colorado on a residential street. I never thought that my mother would get hit by a drunk driver. And I worked for MAD. So, you know, it just goes to show drunk driving never discriminates. Never discriminates. We always have to remember that.
Members of Team Offutt have been arrested for driving under the influence all throughout the Omaha Metro. As you may imagine, the majority are right here in Sarpy County, where the base is located. It's your responsibility to keep the citizens of your community safe, not put them in danger, and law enforcement throughout Sarpy County takes that challenge very seriously. We're not here to discourage you from drinking. We're encouraging you to be responsible if you choose to drink. And always know that Offutt Against Drunk Driving is only a phone call away. It's important to have a healthy relationship with alcohol, know how to drink responsibly, know how it affects your body, and know what the laws are in the state of Nebraska. To drink responsibly, you need to be educated on alcohol. Most of us think we understand what an alcohol serving size is, but do you really? Just because you only have one drink does not mean you've only had one serving size. As you can see, just 1.5 ounces of hard liquor, 5 ounces of wine, 7 ounces of malt liquor, 12 ounces of beer are considered a serving size. That means the 24-ounce beer special at the bar is actually 2 servings. If you consume 2 of those in an hour, that's actually 4 serving sizes in the hour, and it's considered binge drinking. Binge drinking is not social drinking, even though you may drink in that method in a social setting. Social drinking is casual drinking over an extended period of time, like enjoying a beer and pizza with friends. Consuming more than 4 or 5 drinks in one sitting is considered binge drinking. The Center for Disease Control reports that 75% of drinks consumed by adults in the U.S. are in the form of binge drinking. And those binge drinkers are 14 times more likely to drive impaired. According to Lieutenant Russ Zeeb, Sarpy County Sheriff's Department day shift commander, Nebraska is not immune to this epidemic.
No, and the binge drinking is a situation all across Nebraska, not just at Offutt Air Force Base. It's part of our environment. It's changing the social norm that we grew up with, and it's very unfortunate. I don't think anybody is going to plan on going out and let's go out and get drunk and see if we can get arrested or hurt somebody or something like that. We're going to go out and have a good time. The problem is with peer pressure. We go back in there, come on, have another drink, whatever, you know, and they keep going and going and going.
Binge drinking is one of the many factors that have led to the trend we're currently seeing with driving under the influence arrests and crashes involving drivers with extremely high blood alcohol content. There are many factors, including height, weight, composition of a drink, and rate of absorption that all have an effect on blood alcohol levels. The legal limit here in Nebraska is a 0.08 blood alcohol content, and driving at 0.08 is not only illegal, it's dangerous. The limit was set at 0.08 because it's the level where all drinkers showed a serious deterioration in driving ability. However, that does not mean everyone is fine to drive up to a 0.08 blood alcohol content, since some form of impairment actually starts with your first drink. The average blood alcohol content for an Offutt DUI arrest is 0.15%, twice the legal limit of 0.08. It's been found that drunk drivers with a 0.15% blood alcohol content or above are 20 times more likely to be involved in a fatal crash. These high blood alcohol levels are a result of binge drinking, not social drinking. When your alcohol content is this high, your decision-making ability is impaired, leading you to think you're okay to drive when you're far from it. That's why the best choice is to have a plan for how you are getting home even before you take your first drink. The effect of alcohol in your body does not end once you make it home safely after a night of drinking. Nothing alters a high blood alcohol content but time. That means things like sleep, coffee, energy drinks can't make you sober faster. And just because you stop drinking at 8 p.m. does not mean by the time you wake up the next morning at 5 a.m., your body has metabolized all the alcohol throughout your system. Even after your body has metabolized the alcohol, it still has long-term effects. Alcohol leads to weaker bones, decreases your muscles' ability to react and recover. Even the next day, it can slow reaction times. In fact, just one drink can reverse up to 2 weeks of physical training and could keep you from performing to your best when the mission requires it most. Now that you know what alcohol does to your body, think about what it can do to both your life and your career. If you were arrested for a DUI, the mission readiness of Offutt Air Force Base would be compromised. It takes the synergy and skill sets of all of your teammates to meet the base's many demanding mission requirements. Staff Sergeant Nicholas Johnson, Senior Airman Cassie Jenigas, and former Technical Sergeant, now inmate Rick Burr, all learned firsthand about the costly impact of choosing to drink and drive. Former Technical Sergeant Johnson went out for a beer one Friday night, ended up in the back of a police car. He admits he could have changed the course of his life had his night started out with a plan, or even ended up with a plan by calling for a designated driver. Now he's working to regain the respect and rank he held before his DUI.
There wasn't a thought process of a designated driver. totally off the cuff. And when you're doing something like that, you know, being off the cuff and on a whim without a plan is you know, the downward spiral. Embarrassed. And I don't understand the reason why. I can't tell you, oh, the reason why I would have been, you know, embarrassed or you know, I don't have a reason. Because thinking back of it, if, you know, it would have been just like, hey, Sergeant so-and-so, I need a ride. You know, I'm at, you know, location A, you know. And I know my supervisor would have gone, roger that, I'll be there in a minute. You know. And shoot, to be honest with you, that person might have even brought their wife and drove my car home, you know. So there wouldn't even been, so, you know, if you want, the reason is hard-headedness, embarrassment, whatever, but I'd take all, you know, the embarrassment in the world, you know, to do it over again. You know, it hit pretty hard when you're sitting there, you know, they pull you out of your respective position. They pull you out of your respective position. You have, you know, I came into the flight the very next day, duty day, and had to explain to them why I wasn't going to be running their section anymore, which hurt pretty bad. However, it didn't hurt as much until probably like 4 or 5 days later, when something was going down, or, you know, something was happening within the flight, or something was going on within the section, and, you know, they came up to me, hey, LJ, you know, or Sergeant Johnson, you know, hey, we need your help on this, and I'm like, I can't help you, you know, I'm not that guy anymore. So you get to where your achievements on either in your blues, on where your ribbon rack is, or on your arm where your rank is at. And by getting demoted, guess what? I get to look at my failure every day when I get dressed in the morning.
Best friend.
You know, a couple days after the incident, actually went back. I went through my wallet. You know, first discovering, you know, oh, the police took my driver's license. And then just to go back through it, you know, to say I had, at that time, I had 5 DUI helper cards. I had one from Chiefs Group for the Happy Cap. I had one from the First Sergeants Association, or from the First Sergeants. I had one from MXS, and then I had 2 different ones of just wingman cards. So I had a total of 5 different get out of jail free cards in my wallet that I did not choose to use. Reasons, yeah, the reasons are simple. You know, you go out there, you have a beer, not one beer, but you go out there, you have, you know, more than what you expected, and your thought process or reasoning skills aren't there. That's the big thing about, you know, if you are going to go out, you know, to have a drink, have, you know, whatever with your buddies and friends, have that plan set in place before you go. The one big thing I thought of, you always ask, hey, you know, say you're at a house party or a barbecue, or you're at a restaurant, and you ask your friend, your buddy, all right, hey, are you okay to drive? If at that moment you're asking that person if you're okay to drive, that person's not okay to drive. It's not worth it, you know. It's, hey, I'll drive you home and come by and we'll get your car in the morning. But, you know, if you're asking your buddy, your friend, if they're cool to drive, if you have that inclination that they might not be, or, you know, that thought, learn from my mistake rather than making their own. I mean, I already did it, you know. I came out of it unscathed, but I did it. So, you know, I have no trouble talking to anybody about this. It was a mistake that I did, and guess what? It's in my past, and I would rather people learn from my mistake than have to go make it themselves. I'm glad that I'm sitting here and not in jail or now on the streets or unemployed. I am truly thankful that I'm here.
Staff Sergeant Johnson had all the tools and resources available to make the right decision, but he didn't. Not before he departed his house, and not immediately before he got behind the wheel of his vehicle. He let his embarrassment drive his decision. Senior Airman Jenigas admits she's one of the lucky ones. She made a decision that changed her life, and her DUI impacted her mission readiness, the effectiveness of her entire work center, and ultimately impacted her family. But even after all that, she knows things could have been much worse. Her decision could have injured or killed someone.
And it just kind of all hit me, like I was thinking about it, and I was like, how could I have done something like this? So stupid. But I couldn't change it. They arrested me.
Were you mad that you got caught, or were you mad that you did it?
I was mad that I got caught, and I got mad that I did it. Because, I mean, it wasn't my first time drinking and driving. Like, I've had a few here and drove home, and thank you. But it was more of the fact that I know what the consequences of DUIs are. I know that I love my career. And I started thinking about, wow, I'm going to lose my career. And then I thought about it, and I was like, I might even lose my child. Because I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to be the person that my supervisor looked at like, you woke me up at 2 o'clock in the morning to come and pick you up drunk. I didn't call because of that. And I don't think that other airmen call for that reason, or they don't call because they think that they're okay to drive. They think that it's okay to drink 6 drinks and drive, or they just don't have really the self-worth to care about it. Sitting in jail, horrible. I don't ever want to go through it again. I cried the entire time I was in there. I tried calling my dad, and I did. I got through to him, and the only thing he said is, what do you want me to do about it? I can't do anything. And I was like, you're right, you can't. And that's hard, hearing your own parent tell you, you got yourself into this, I can't do anything for you. They're not nice to you in jail either. They don't care. You're a criminal, and they make you feel like it. It was an eye-opener, though. I mean, thank God I didn't kill anybody. I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't injure anybody. And to see the people that were injured or were hurt or that had deaths in their family because of a drunk driver, that's really hard, because it could have been me. It could have happened. I could have killed somebody. I could have. And that's really tough to deal with. I was on probation for a year, and I had to call in every morning to see if I had a color code called off, and if I did, I had to go down to my probation officer. I had to do breathalyzers. That kind of really, it takes a toll on you, because every time your color gets called and you're like, I have to go and blow into a breathalyzer. And I committed a crime, and it just kind of sparks everything back up. Like, yes, I did this, and now I'm doing this, and because I did this, so it's just kind of a constant reminder. I had a lot of fines. I had like close to $2,000. LOR, letter of reprimand, UIF, unfavorable information file, is you get a referral EPR. You're ineligible to promote, you're ineligible to PCS, you're ineligible to do anything. You're pretty much at a standstill for a 12 to 24 month period. And you're looked at all the time. You're constantly monitored. You got somebody over your shoulder watching every move that you make. So if you mess up once, they will nail you. That's what happened to me. I was late to work and I got an Article 15. Demotion, everything.
Failure to abide by.
My son, because he had to live through it. He had to live through everything. He had to live through when my coworkers had to pick me up and he was like, why are they picking my mom up? Why are you bringing me to school? Why isn't my mom bringing me to school? Why isn't my mom picking me up? Because, you know, you can't drive on base. My son was in the CDC. You know, like, my dad, because obviously there were financial issues and he had to help me out. And I mean, most of our parents are barely making it just like we are. Why? Why? That's the only thing I can say is why. There's no reason for it, and it still hits me every time. I know there's a squadron that got one this weekend, and all I can think of is what was so important that you had to get in your car and drive off with a 0.3 blood alcohol level. That is like death. You are lucky to even be alive at that BAC. Why would you get in a car? Why would you risk your life and risk others? Doesn't make sense.
As you can see, Airman Jenigas gets it. She understands that her decision to drink and drive affected the efficiency of her work center. She impacted her co-workers. She impacted her family. And she understands all of that is nothing compared to what could have happened. Technical Sergeant Richard Burr wasn't as lucky as Johnson and Jenigas. He too rolled the dice. His came up snake eyes. Sergeant Burr was a well-respected air traffic controller, guiding the nation's finest into safe landings, until one decision altered his course forever. On July 12, 2007, Burr was getting ready for a permanent change of station to his next base. He decided at the last minute to join a fellow airman at a local bar to celebrate his last few days in Omaha. He left his house with a plan to only consume 1 drink an hour. The fatal flaw in his plan was assuming he could mentally calculate if he was okay to drive after his impairment had already begun. In reality, his blood alcohol content was 0.16%, twice the legal limit. When he and his drunk wingman left the bar, they headed south on 90th. Burr was driving 85 miles per hour in a 35 zone and changing the compact disc player in his car when he ran the red light at the intersection of Pacific. Burr T-boned another car, killing the driver and a passenger, and critically injuring another passenger. Both he and his passenger were also seriously injured.
Leaving, I felt fine. I mean, I felt like I was anticipating that I was probably around 0.07. I didn't even think I was at the limit. I felt that fine. And then I found out, you know, that I had killed people and that I ran the red light, which I don't ever remember seeing a red light. And on top of all the pain I was already in, is like, there's no way to really explain how, you know, the physical pain and the emotional pain and just all the feelings you have at the same time. I didn't know what to do, what to think. There's all kinds of emotions and thoughts, and it's just, you know, horrible. I don't know how to really describe it. It's something I definitely wouldn't hope on anybody, ever. I knew from the second of hearing it, I would be, going to prison. I knew my life was going to change tremendously. Everything that I had and knew was all going to change, and that's even more scary because you don't know anything. You don't know how it's going to happen, and it's like I didn't know what happened, how I let it happen. So then, there's all that self-hatred and like disappointment in yourself, and it's just it's just impossible to actually put into real words how I felt and stuff. What can you really say? What can you, how do you actually say anything? And all I could really say was that I was endlessly sorry, which is truer than any words can be, because every day I think about it. Everything in my life, it was changed from that, and it'll always be this. It'll always be with me, and it doesn't go away. It's an endless thing. Even if I get out of here, it's not like, oh, it's over. I'm going to carry it with me forever. I'll always have that guilt and shame and sorrow. I think that, it can happen. Because I was there. I was an airman. I heard all the briefings. I seen all the commercials. I watched the news. I know that it can happen. I just never thought it would be me. And I'm sure everyone thinks that. Everyone's like, that happens to other people. It won't happen to me. It can. And you don't want it to. And I think that's pretty much the biggest thing, is it can happen to you. And you have to know that. You have to think that so that you can avoid it. Because if you're thinking it won't happen, that's when it sneaks up and accidents do happen. But if you're expecting it to happen, or not expecting it, but knowing that it can, you look to prevent it constantly. And that's what needs to be done. You have to know, and you have to always take the active thought to prevent it from happening. And not thinking that it can't be you, or it won't be you.
These three stories just touch the surface, each different and each impacting Offutt in their own way. Sergeant Johnson, Airman Jenigas, and inmate Burr were all brave enough to tell you their stories, so you won't ever have to walk in their shoes. These three people are just like you. All of them sat through all the briefings, all of them knew that drinking and driving was not acceptable, and all of them suffered the consequences of their decisions. The damage of a DUI arrest is devastating, forever altering your professional and personal life. But the real deterrent should not be the consequences you could face or the fear of driving through the gate drunk. Lives are at stake every time you get behind the wheel after drinking. Lieutenant Russ Zeeb, Gene Coburn, and Lieutenant Colonel Dana McGowan have all been impacted by drunk driving. And they know all too well that lives can be taken by one decision and that your world can change in an instant. On July 15, 2007, a pleasant Sunday afternoon, Lieutenant Russ Zeeb was called to duty. The phone call took him to Gene Coburn's lake house, a scene that he will still remember when he retires and walks away from law enforcement. Jean, her family, and friends had gathered to enjoy a gorgeous day at the lake, a day they will never forget because late that evening it turned tragic when a drunk boater with a blood alcohol level of 0.17 struck and killed two of her best friends, David and Kathy Gilfillan.
July 15th, 2007, it was a beautiful sunny Sunday. And as most Sundays or Saturdays and Sundays in the summertime, we would grab our best friends, Kathy and David, and we would head to the lake and spend the day floating and in the sand, the sun, boating. We just really enjoyed going down there. They enjoyed it just as much as we did. We usually went down about noontime, and just spent the whole day in the evening and had dinner and all of that. And we had spent the, like I said, beautiful day. It was 94 degrees. We had dinner about 6 o'clock, and we were going to go for a boat ride right after, which we normally did. We always called it our snooze cruise because a couple of my husband and Kathy like to kind of nod off after a big meal, so that's what we always called the snooze cruise after dinner. So I said, well, let's go on the snooze cruise. I always drove. And Kathy said, well, let's cool off a minute because it was a pretty hot day. So we were in the water cooling off. Our boat was parked on the beach, and Kathy and David were standing at the back of the boat, so kind of like waist deep, thigh waist deep. I had been standing right beside them, talking with them, and then I had gone to the cabin and come back. I was halfway down the beach, and we had another couple there and their 19-year-old son who were also in the water. And I heard my husband screaming, and I kind of looked over to him. He was also up the middle of the beach. I looked over to try to figure out what he was screaming at, and when I looked back, I saw a boat coming full speed right at us. It had apparently come from across the lake, only for about 30 seconds, I found out later, come from across the lake, and the man was not at the wheel. He was at the back of the boat trying to, I don't know what he was doing for sure, but all I really remember is, just seeing the boat. I saw it hit Kathy and David and our boat, basically. It threw Kathy and David into the air, threw Kathy straight up into the air, threw David off to the side a little bit like this, and then it hit our dock, landed, kind of skidded across our dock, and then hit our beach, and that's when the boat stopped. And it was still going, it was still going full speed, but, the sand stopped it. It's just, I can't even explain the shock. I mean, I think I did actually go into shock because all I remember is standing on the beach screaming, oh my God, oh my God. I mean, you just kind of, I found out, a friend of mine told me that when you have a tragedy or an accident like that, you either freeze, flee, or try to help in some way, I guess. And apparently I froze because I couldn't even go help them, and I still have a little bit of guilt about that to this day, because I didn't run down to help them, which I probably couldn't have I couldn't have. But you just don't know how you're going to react in a situation like that. My husband and I both grabbed for the phone to call 911. That was our first instinct. And, of course, a million people around the lake were also trying to call 911, and somebody got through to them. People came from different directions to try to help Kathy and David as best as they could. They were in the shallow part of the water, laying face down, basically, and they tried to turn them over and, do what they could. We found out later that Kathy's spinal cord was severed, so she was killed immediately. David was still alive, and some people tried to do CPR on him, They ended up life-flighting him to the hospital after that, and he lived another 11 days, but he had so many brain injuries that there was no way that he was gonna survive that. The part of what happened after is a little bit blurry to me because, like I said, I think I was still in shock, and I remember a neighbor coming over and kind of trying to console me a little bit, I guess, or to keep me calm. And we walked to the back of the cabin, and this was probably the hardest part for me because I knew this was going to happen, sorry. She was my dearest friend, and my husband came around. I'm sorry.
Okay, good.
My husband came around the corner of the cabin and just did this, so I knew I had lost her. I'm sorry. So I remember falling to my knees, and some of my neighbors just helped me up and kind of took me over to their cabin because I was not really helping anybody. So we went home, and I just remember sitting on the couch saying, what just happened? I mean, it's like a nightmare. You really still can't even believe that it happened. And their kids didn't know until, I think they got a hold of Kim about 11:30 or so, because they ended up going to the wrong house. She had just moved. And then, you know, we didn't know whether to call her, to not call her. How are they going to feel towards us? Was it our fault? We just sat there and ran through this gamut of emotions that we had been family friends for over 25 years. Their kids were like our kids, vice versa. And you wonder how all that's going to turn out. And we had one of the police officers call her to see if she wanted us to come to the hospital or just stay away or whatever, and she wanted us to come up. So just to walk in and see Kim's face the first time, and her Kathy's sister's face, because we knew their whole families. It was hard. It was really hard to see them, you know, losing somebody at that age, and so tragic. That was really tough. Yeah. Really tough. It is hard to describe. I mean, I really did feel like it was just a nightmare. I just felt like, you know, this can't be happening. I just couldn't believe it. You know, we had this glorious day at the lake and having such a good time, and to have it end like that is just, you can't even describe it. You never stop missing them. And, you know, I couldn't go to the lake for a long time. I just couldn't go down there at all. And then we had some friends that tried to encourage me to finally go down there, and I did. But if my husband and I went down there, I couldn't stand it. I would sit out there and just cry. I just couldn't do it. And, you know, we have gotten to the place where it was such a happy place for us, and such a good time that we spent with our kids and their friends, and had a great time there. We have finally gotten some of that back, but you never forget. You never forget. First thing I do is look out there. I look at his house. You just can't. You never get over it. You never forget it. And him being in or out is not going to bring our family back. I don't know how to get through to people either. You know, I don't know what more you can say to people or show people that it's just not worth it. It's not worth getting behind the wheel. You know, if you want to go down there and have a good time and drink, do that. But either have somebody that's not drinking that's going to get you home, spend the night, whatever it takes. Just don't drive the boat, don't drive a car, you know, whatever it takes. You know, just be safe. You've got a lot of other people out there. Don't endanger your life, don't endanger theirs or their families. We had a group of kids that were 2 doors away from us that night, lots of little kids. You know, what would happen if the boat would have gone there? If you're going to drink, stay home and do it, you know. Don't get behind the wheel and jeopardize. You not only jeopardize your life, you've got, you know, if you've killed somebody, their whole family. I mean, it's countless numbers of people that you're affecting by the choices that you're making. You know, your life isn't the same, your family's life. You know, I'm sure that the man who killed Kathy and David, you know, he left his family, he's in prison. That's a huge impact on them. You know, it ruined their lives, it ruined our lives. I mean, just so many people are affected by it. It's just not worth it.
Jean's story is tragic. In a moment, her best friends were killed. Nothing will bring them back, and her life will never be the same. She's still trying to learn how to survive day to day in a new world. One where she can never talk to her best friends or enjoy a sunny day at the lake without visualizing that horrific day. You couldn't find 2 better parents than Lieutenant Colonel Dana McCown's. They were her rock, her support system. And in 1.3 seconds on a Saturday afternoon, they were gone. A serial drunk driver crossed the median, taking their lives as they were heading home from a shopping trip for their granddaughter's 3rd birthday. They didn't even have a chance to hit the brakes before the impact. That impact changed Dana's life forever.
My parents were killed at 5:35 p.m. on a lazy Saturday afternoon. They had been in the shopping mall, shopping for my niece's 3-year-old birthday gift, which was the next day. And so my mom and dad had just gone out to the shopping mall, and Mom just had to have these pair of Skechers tennis shoes, and they didn't have them at one mall, so she made Papa drive to the other mall just to get these tennis shoes, and they were on their way home from the mall. And at 5:35, a 3-time DUI offender, convicted, drove across the median, just like on Highway 370 here in Bellevue, and in 1.3 seconds hit them head on and killed them on impact. You know, I've talked around the wing a lot about my story, and have really taken the time and the emotion to tell people that, you know, really from a military perspective, we have to be prepared. We have to have our SGLI right. We have to have our wills right. We need to have all of those little things right. One, because it's tied to operational capability, but two, it's really the right thing to do for our families. But I'll tell you one thing that I don't talk a lot is really no one prepares you to go look for your dead parents.
Right.
You know, my sister and I, military families, my brother-in-law was stationed here at Offutt, I was in San Antonio, and you know, our blessing is we both talked to them on Friday, we both talked to them on Saturday, and actually my sister was on the phone with my mom less than a minute before she was killed when we went back and looked at the phone records. And my mom was so giddy about these silly Skechers sandals that she had gotten Elizabeth for her birthday. Mm-hmm. That was my mom. When the grandkids were born, she was all about those babies, you know. And but no one prepared us to, okay, we can't find our mom and dad on Sunday when me, mom, papa didn't call for Elizabeth's birthday. And no one prepared me to go to work the next day and tell my boss, hey, I can't find my parents, but when I do, I'm going to kill them because they're worrying me. You know, no one prepares us to, or teaches us how to look for them for 4 hours. You know, we called all the hospitals, and it was our good luck that no one had them. We called all Central Florida, we called Tampa, we called Orlando, and we thought it was good news because if they had been injured or even, you know, worse, things that we couldn't imagine, they would have told us they had been there, and we couldn't find them, so that was good. No one prepared me to call my mom's work and for her to say, you know, honey, we can't find her either, and we're worried because it's not like her to not show up. And, you know, my boss had to teach me how to call the sheriff's department for a wellness check to say, can you go look for my parents? And about 30, 45 minutes later, they called us back and they said, good news, your parents aren't there. The house is locked, both vehicles are there, there's no sign of forced entry. But my sister and I knew, you know, that we needed to keep looking because they had 3 vehicles. You know, my sister and brother-in-law actually found it out on the internet. You know, what true prepares you to do that is go out to Google and find your dead parents. But that's what it said. A man and wife, age 59, killed on U.S. Highway 27, and they were 1 mile from their house where they were killed. They described the vehicle in the internet website on the nightly news, and we knew it was them because we knew the model of their car. We knew that mom and dad were 59. It was too much coincidence, but you know, when the Florida Highway Patrol actually called and said, quote, what do you know? You know, nothing prepares you for him to confirm that your parents were killed 2 days ago and that they were killed by a drunk driver. An hour after our parents we had confirmation they were killed, you know, I went home from work after that whole shock of work, and no kidding, my entire duty section lived that morning with me, and they too were affected for the rest of their lives because frankly it was horrific. But that I had to go home an hour later, and how do you call your family, your entire family, and say, you know how our aunt just passed away 15 days prior, and you know, I just gave the eulogy. How do you go back and say, I regret to inform you that my parents were just killed by a drunk driver and we'll be back home for another funeral? It is not something that my family took well, and tragic shock. The whole family was just in shock to see both bodies laying there when they walked into that room. It's just not something that's supposed to be. It's not every day that your 2, you know, best aunts that was your mom's best friends, they take you and your sister clothes shopping for your dead parents. I mean, there's nothing like going to the mall and saying, okay, well, mom would look pretty in this for the funeral, and silly as it was, but our parents were a little cheesy, and we knew that our dad would want a matching shirt to match my mom's outfit. Mm-hmm. But to have to go shopping for that is not pleasant. And then we take the clothes to the funeral home, and ironically, the two hearse pull in from Nashville, and they unload our parents right in front of our eyes. And you know, this little bitty box for my mom, she was very petite, and you know, bigger box for my dad. And you know, it really comes down to that. My sister and I don't need the individual, the offender, to be punished. The justice for him will come someday, and that's just our beliefs. But there is a reality, is that as time has gone on, we feel like, you know, I think most people assume that he was killed because it was such a tragic accident. Mom and Dad were going 55, he was going 80, and they hit head on. Neither one hit the brakes. But he did live, and he jumped bail, and he's wanted on the Florida Highway Patrol's most wanted list. He's wanted by America's Most Wanted, who's been trying to help us find him. By the time that he was air-vac'd from the scene, Sheriff's Department got to the office, it was many hours later. It was .32 is officially what he was charged with, but it was .36 at the scene when they took his blood. But, you know, I think as time has gone on, our hearts kind of need that closure, and it's not really something that I can really explain. Not that I would have wished. It's a void. Yeah. I don't wish him to have died at the scene. But my sister and I still have to go back and testify. We haven't got that day in court, as they say. You know, I think it takes time, and you have to live your life to figure out what your new normal is going to be, because it's not. Everything changes. You can't go back, and your family traditions. My sister and I have tried to keep them as close to what we did with our parents, but at the same time, it's not the same, and we have to reestablish what our traditions are. The holidays just passed, and it's important for the grandkids, so to speak, to have those traditions that we grew up with, but yet it's not the same, because me, Mom, and Papa is not there, and there's still, you know, holidays, birthdays. It's instant grief that comes up. My folks didn't come to my basic training graduation when I was enlisted, but they did come to my commissioning as a lieutenant. And then they didn't go to any other pinning ceremony except for when I was a major. And I'm so thankful today that they were able to come up for that and pin me on. But I will tell you, as great of a day and as proud of they would have been for me the day that I pinned on Lieutenant Colonel, in my heart I was still sad, because there really wasn't a bigger supporter than my parents. What I don't tell folks, that I only tell my sister, is that it's hard. The briefings are, they look from an outsider's perspective like it's a business. You know, I'm standing up, I'm giving a briefing, I'm not emotional, yet I leave and it all hits me. Because every time I have to live of seeing the pictures of my parents, seeing the good times. I show the pictures of the actual scene of the accident. I show a picture of my mom stuck in the engine, my dad on a sheet laying on the ground. I do it so if one person makes the right decision at the right time, then the emotion that people don't know I go through, but the emotion that it takes, to me, they won't have died in vain.
Through doing briefings at Offutt, Lieutenant Colonel McGowan has had the unique opportunity to take the lessons she learned in her family tragedy to help improve the base's mission readiness. She encourages everyone to think not only about the decision to drink and drive, but to also be prepared for a sudden loss.
Today's brief is about being prepared for life tragedy. More people are killed, more airmen are killed on the roads in POVs, 4-wheels and 2-wheels in the Air Force than they are in combat. That's good for our success rate in combat, right? But it is not good, the fact that we have more of a chance to be killed in a car accident than what we do for a living. We all in this room, whether you're military or civilian, we have taken the moral oath to protect and defend our citizens of this great community, haven't we? You know what? We're Nebraskans. You know, I may be a Kentucky girl if you can't tell from the accent, right? It ain't going nowhere at this point in my life, right? But we are Nebraskans. We live in Nebraska. We serve Nebraskans, right? And every time that we drink and drive, we put those same people at risk that we have vowed to protect and defend. Folks, that's what today is about, okay? Today is not about giving you a brief and shaking my finger and saying don't drink and drive, right? This is not about losing a stripe. It's not about losing a rank. It's not about losing a career. This is about the fact that we have taken that moral oath and we owe it to our community to do the right thing. And Offutt is now on that path of changing its culture, okay? According to the Department of Transportation, drivers with a prior DUI are 8 times more likely to be involved in a DUI vehicle fatality. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? You know, stats are just numbers, aren't they? But when you're talking about DUIs, numbers usually represent people. They represent people's lives and their families that are changed forever. I am here because I am begging you. I want to look each and every one of you in the eyes, and I am begging you, if you don't get anything out of this brief, I'm begging you to talk to your family. Folks, I can't tell you, I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room that's ever experienced family tragedy, but I cannot tell you how much it made a difference that we knew what to do with our parents' bodies. We knew that we needed to ship them to Kentucky. We knew the funeral home to go to. We knew what they wanted. We knew their intent. You know, we talk about commander's intent all along, right? What's my mom's and dad's intent? How many folks have never had the talk with their siblings? I bet you just about everybody in this room has never talked to their brother and sister. You know, on the military side, we talk about family care plans, don't we? Meal to meal, or people with other situations. Why don't we have family care plans as civilians, so to speak, right? What if something happens to you and your husband on the way home, to you and your wife? Who is going to take care of your babies? You don't want the court to decide who's going to take care of your babies, do you? You want to pick. You want to be part of that solution set. Talk to your family, talk to your parents, your in-laws, your brother, your sister, kind of find out what everybody's kind of wanting out there. I'm also going to beg you to put ICE in your cell phones. I have ICE 1, 2, and 3 in my cell phone. I have an ICE card in my glove box, and I have an ICE card in my wallet. My mom had an ICE card in her glove box. Anybody want to guess whose name was on it? It was my dad, right? How often do you ride in a car on the weekends with your spouse? Like always, right? Right? This is my point. Have a contingent listed. Never in a million years would I have ever thought that my parents would have been killed together. But if my mom had a contingent listed, then they could have called my sister and I. Some law enforcement and medical emergency personnel will not pick up your cell phone and call. Some will. I say put them all in there and then let them call if they want to call. Now I know on the military side we like the DD Form 93 process. That's a great process, I've already said. But I will tell you, having lived what I've lived through, I don't ever want to put my sister in that situation if something was to happen to me. Because you don't want to be notified or not notified like we were. I'm also going to ask you to look at your SGLI. I bet you if I was to do a random survey, I bet you 9 out of 10 of you do not have a contingent listed on your SGLI, do you? See the wheels turning. I bet you don't. Most people don't have contingents listed. Here's the deal. Take it or leave it. But in our experience, our parents had 2 insurance policies. One went to each other, and then one went to each other, and then to my sister and I as contingents. The one that went to us, we got fairly quickly in about a month. The one that went just to each other had to get caught up in a review process, a legal process, where if someone had wanted to fight it and say, well, I live somewhere in this legal tree for them to run, they could have made a claim against that money. So we didn't have that, and the insurance company paid out. But it did delay things. And folks, I'm telling you, I spent $30,000 out of my own checkbook. $30,000 out of my pocket, out of my savings account, and out of my credit cards, really, right? Isn't that how we pay big stuff like that? Basically bought a car on my credit cards because I had to pay the bills because we didn't have any money. Did I mention to you the guy that killed my parents had 3 DUIs? Guess who didn't have any money? No no car insurance, right? No driver's license. Folks, there wasn't any money. I guess everybody just assumes if you kill somebody, you get money. Not in our case. There was no money. Next slide. My parents had uninsured motorists. That's why we were able to pay off their bills of their estate, which was great. I bet you most of you do not know how much money you have on your insurance policy today for uninsured motorists. I would tell you, in the state of Nebraska, the legal cap is $300,000. Mine is now sitting at $300,000, and I'll tell you, it only cost me, I think it was $4 or $5 more every 6 months than what I was paying. It was chump change. And think about it, right? The economy's not great, right? People are paying their mortgage, some of them, right? They're eating. But have you seen on CNN where they says people have less life insurance than they've ever had, and people have less car insurance than they ever have? If somebody kills you and does not have car insurance, your uninsured motorist is where you'll get that money from. So fortunately, my parents had some money on their uninsured motorists, and we got that money, and we were able to basically pay all the bills. Now, my parents did not have mortgage protection insurance and gap insurance. We get $400,000, don't we? Isn't that awesome? $400,000. I don't think I need it. That's just me personally. I get $400,000. It'll pay off my mortgage for my sister. It'll pay off my vehicles, right? You decide. If my parents had had it, it would have paid off their mortgage. If my mom had had gap insurance on her car, their car was brand new. And so even though the insurance company paid it off very quickly, we still were $2,000 short. If we had had the gap insurance, it would have paid that. I don't know. You consider it at least. Talk to your family. If their accounts had been set up payable on death, and let's pretend that it had been set to pay to my dad, so to speak, and then to my sister and I as contingents, it would have paid that money out. So that means that we could have used their cash to pay the upfront bills versus me using my credit card. I don't know if you want it, but I'm just asking you to look in it. I have it now. Probate, in our case, went through 2 days. 2 days. The state says everything is to split between you and your sister. It took us a week and a half to get in their stupid safety deposit box. What a pain it is, right? Do you even know if your family has a safety deposit? Do you know where it's at? Do you know if you're on the card? Do you know how to get into it? It's something that I would ask that you talk about. Here's just some interesting facts to take home in your hip pocket. 67 Nebraskans were killed in 2008, which meant that in 2008, one person died every 5 days. Folks, Nebraska is a rural state, aren't we? Right? We have the Omaha Metro, and we have Lincoln, and then we have rural. So really, most of these deaths are coming from the Omaha Metro and the Lincoln area. So really, if you were to redo the numbers for this area, it's a little bit higher. 3,000 Nebraskans were injured, which means that one person is injured because of DUI every 3 hours. 13,000 plus Nebraskans are arrested for DUI, meaning that DUIs are the #1 reason for arrest out of every 6 arrests in the state, which means that DUIs are Nebraska's #1 most violently committed crime, or 1 arrest for DUIs every 30 minutes. 1 arrest for DUI in 30 minutes. That is unbelievable, right? And we live here in the Omaha Metro.
DUIs are putting lives and careers at risk, reducing your combat readiness and your ability to fly, fight, and win. Your safety and the safety of the families in this community must not be endangered by an act that is 100% preventable. You all know you would never go into battle without a plan, so why would you go out drinking unprepared when the risks are the same? The key is making sure you have a plan before you take your first drink. When the plan fails, call your wingman, supervisor, first sergeant, commander, Offutt against drunk driving, or Chief's Happy Cab. With all of these options, you have no excuse for drinking and driving. Having and executing your plan should be a way of life, a lifelong commitment to keep yourself and those around you safe.
With the deployments, we're at war. You know, we got to be ready to go all the time. You know, so me not being able to deploy, as I don't want to use the rank I'm qualified, but the rank I am capable of doing. It puts a strong weight upon the other tech sergeants in the flight's shoulders. And even so, I'm still 15 months later, or 13 months later, I'm still day in, day out. I have to go above and beyond. I have to go above any other person. If I want, you know, a good marking on my PR. I have to go above and beyond everybody else. You know, you're still rated at the rank you were. So I'm still, to this day, I'm still pushing all of my limits that I can, getting all the putting all the responsibility on my shoulders, even though I can't take some responsibility off the tech sergeants that I let down shoulders.
DUIs are preventable. DUI crashes, DUI deaths, DUI fatalities, 100% preventable. It would not have been good if my parents were killed in a car accident. It would not have taken away the grief, I don't believe, but my parents did not die in a car accident. They died in a car crash by someone with a blood alcohol level of 0.36 and was a 3-time DUI offender who had no car insurance and no driver's license. I do not ever want another family to have to go through what my sister and I have had to live.
It's hard. Well, you basically, you know, I'll never get their lifeless bodies out of my mind, you know, laying at the water's edge. That'll never go away. Seeing my best friend in a coffin will never go away. Those things you just have to live with, you know, that never goes away.
And there's nothing you can say. There's nothing, you know, all I want to do is take it all back and make it all right. And you can't. There's nothing. Words can't describe it, and words can't fix it.